Hey, welcome back to Nelson Gunsmithing. It's been a minute since I did a video. Today we are going to be taking down a Kimber Carbon 9. This is also known as the Mako R7 or the Compact 9. There are some minor differences. This is very specifically the Carbon Compact model. I assume you know how to take your gun down already, so we're going to go ahead and skip that part. We will start with the slide. The slide is held together by just one pin. The rear of the slide takes down like a Glock. Depress the striker. I used a small punch here. Make sure you're supporting your thumb over that striker because it will go flying. Here's your striker element. So we have your spring. You've got your striker support rod here. That's your striker, your firing pin. That's your striker sear, kind of like on a Glock. If you need to take this apart further, there's nothing fancy that happens here. This is a U-shaped component, and it simply rotates out. Reassemble, it's very simple. It's omnidirectional. You just make sure it's seated on that peg there. Make sure your spring is seated on the peg. To remove the plunger element, you will depress the plunger with your thumb. Give the back of the slide a few wraps. That's the retention rod that comes out. There's your plunger. There's your plunger safety and your plunger safety spring. The last part in this gun, in the upper, is the extractor assembly. That's also known as the breech face in this particular firearm. I do not recommend removing this unless you absolutely have to. It is fairly simple to remove, but it wears on the roll pin, and this is kind of a part that's under a lot of tension, so it's best not to do this unless absolutely necessary. Drive this roll pin out. You will wiggle this out. You need to make sure that you maintain careful pressure, because as soon as the breech face clears the slide, a very, very heavy spring is set underneath this extractor. It will go flying, and you'll have to order a new one from Kimber directly. Ask me how I know. So we're going to leave that where it is. Reassembly. You can see that the striker only goes in, or the plunger safety only goes in one direction, hugging that rail. We reinsert the retainer rod. Make sure it's seated. Test the plunger. Reinsert the striker. Now, unlike the Glock, I believe you can lightly lubricate this. Back plate. Back plate. Pressure. And you want to make sure you keep this aimed in a safe direction, because that will go flying if you let it. Just like that. That is how we disassemble the slide. Let's move to the frame. There you go. The frame is held together with 3 pins. 1, 2, 3. One of those pins I've already removed. So let's drive out these other 2. These are roll pins. It is not recommended you remove these again unless really necessary. So, because the more you remove a pin, the more you deform the pin and the plastic around it, the more likely you are to need to replace it. Had to grab a different tool. With the pins removed, we can remove the chassis. Just a little control here, because it's really easy to make the whole thing go flying if you're not careful. Just like that. And that is the whole of the internal mechanism. And we have our striker takedown lever. This part is a little cumbersome. I'll show you how to reassemble it. For reference, the teeth go down when you reassemble it. So there's a little groove on top there, and the teeth are down in relation to the frame. That's how to remember. Okay. We'll set that aside for a moment. A few parts you want to make sure you've accounted for. These tabs are what keep the slide on the frame. You want to make sure you have those. This is your disconnector and the disconnector spring. If you need to replace this, you might be in trouble. The only part that I could not figure out how to replace was the sear spring, because it is a blind pin. It is not meant to be removed. So what you may have to do is cut the spring off, tease it out with some specialized pliers. You can get a wedge down in there. I would not recommend removing that unless that spring is broken. The assembly on this is pretty straightforward. You have your disconnector, you have your disconnector spring. It goes in the right side here. You have this side plate. And when you're ready to reassemble, you will pinch this combined unit and drop it in. I'll show you how to do it. The chassis assembly is a little more complicated. First thing we're going to do is we're going to push out this pin here. And that allows you to take down the rest of the gun. This is your trigger return spring. It's a tricky fit. I'll show you how it works. This is your slide lock spring. It sits like this, and that's what allows the slide lock to move up and down. So now that we have this fully disassembled, we're going to go ahead and start putting everything back together. The first part you're going to want to insert is this heavy spring for your takedown lever. The next step will be to put your takedown lever back on the locking block. And you're going to want to leave just enough gap that you can take this pin, feed it into place, and then push that assembly back together, so that will retain that pin for you. Next, we'll take the trigger. I found that this pin has a taper on one end that makes it a little easier to go in and out. In that case, it is this end. So we're going to insert the trigger into this space right here. There we go. Now I don't want to put that pin in all the way yet, because the next step, and this is the tricky step, is we're going to reinstall the trigger return spring. So this is the orientation the spring is going to have. It is going to sit right here, and you do need a specialized set of pliers like this. I've modified these with a cutout to grip those round springs. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold it like this. I'm going to push this arm against the inside of the frame because I want the other arm to rest inside a little ramp right here on the trigger. Hope you can see that. It sits right in there in a little pocket. So what we're going to do, we're just going to give it a little twist and a push, and just like that it goes in. That went really easy that time. Give it a couple little taps. And what you're going to need to do is you need to make sure that the trigger is lined up with the chassis. Replace that spring. Okay. Now the first step when you reassemble the slide, and it's more complicated than it looks at this point. Again, the teeth go down. You walk that through. Then you need to take, this is your takedown assembly. You're going to put that spring in that pocket. you will lift up on the takedown lever, and you want to have it set so the 3 teeth on that assembly grab that lever and hook into it. I wish I could show you a clever way to do this. It took me several tries, to be honest with you. This plunger assembly has to be put in first, and then what I had to do is I got this seated most of the way down while maintaining tension with my thumb and forefinger on the slide lock on the takedown lever. I used this rod pushed from the front and got it to pop up into there, into that little pocket. You want to tape it about halfway out, but you want to make sure it doesn't slip again, because we have to have the trigger bar partially out to reinstall the sear assembly. Put our ejector on first. This is our disconnector assembly. And what we're going to do, two-step process here, you want to make sure that this spring is underneath the striker. You drop everything into place. See, it slipped out. And the other part you have to do, and I got it there fortunately, is you have to make sure that this arm is in this pocket in the disconnector. Sorry, it's not the most graceful looking gunsmithing, but sometimes the job is like that. Most people only ever see the cool side, where it's a guy who can field strip a Glock in 15 seconds. I can detail strip a Glock and put it back together in under 5. This gun is a challenge to do, just because there's so many parts that have to be dropped in almost simultaneously. All that's left over inserted that one just a tad. No, it's pretty good though. And there we go. That is the reassembled lower. It is not, as I said, in the one regard is not terribly complicated, but on the other hand, it is not made with an armorer in mind. It was built to be a challenge to disassemble, I think. Make sure the spring is centered here. Just drops on, and there you have it. That is the detail strip and reassembly of the Kimber Compact Carbon 9, however you want to call it. Not one of my more graceful videos, I will imagine, but I appreciate you bearing with me. This was a tricky gun. There is no manual, there is no book. If you're watching this, you now know how to do it as well as I do, and that means you now know how to do it as well as anybody outside of Kimber USA. Thanks very much for tuning in. Hope this is helpful. Stay safe out there.